I'm Mangino. Welcome to the Mangino Talks Pittsburgh podcast. I've been a radio talk show host for half of my life and nearly half of that right here in Pittsburgh. And so on my podcast, we talk about everything that matters to us all, from current events to Pittsburgh history, social issues to sports, politics, to practical day-to-day life. And today we are joined by John Schalcosky of the Odd, Mysterious, Fascinating History of Pittsburgh. You can find him on social media everywhere, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just type in @OddPittsburgh. John joining us for a series that we're doing together, world firsts that have occurred right here. And real quick, there are well over 100. Do we have a ballpark number of these world firsts, John?
I think I've tracked down 117 so far.
And many of them are just, okay, a home run, whatever. But some of them are really life-changing.
True world firsts.
Yes,
Like
that have had
world's-
impacts
Yes.
decades later.
Yeah, I mean, things that have changed the course of human history. These events,
Yes.
these facts that happen to have a connection to Pittsburgh somehow, which is crazy to think about. But it, because every place, every city has some sort of, claim of something.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're talking about things that we're talking about, major thing like the birth of radio, the birth of television, the birth of movies, the birth of literally every kind of technologically advanced thing.
Mm-hmm.
Literally the power that's powering the room that we're in right now. The ingredients that made the PPG paints, the latex paint, that was invented in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
There was no such thing as latex paint until PPG did it. Fluorescent light bulbs, right? You could literally point around the air conditioning, hot water had an origin story in Pittsburgh where the water heater was invented here for the first time. Touch-tone telephones, right? It goes on. But anyways.
Let's go over some of
Yes.
this, and we'll start off with science. And we think of, we're in the atomic age.
Mm-hmm.
The atomic age, is there a story that goes back to Pittsburgh for the birth of the
Yeah,
atomic
of course.
age?
Well, not only did you have people involved in the very essence of the Manhattan Project, with the invention of the atomic weapons and the technology that goes behind atomic energy to begin with, people here in Pittsburgh were experimenting with different ways to use this atomic energy, this kind of source that's so powerful that you could use it for so much good as well as bad.
Right.
So how do you use it for good? To power things. And they started experimenting with even just splitting the atom, which was the thing that Westinghouse did. There's that very famous thing it's now on the ground somewhere by the Westinghouse factory, but it was like this big atom smasher that once existed, which is where, according to most accounts, atomic energy was kind of formulated and controlled into what we know it is as of today. And because of these innovations that Westinghouse was putting through, they started testing for the first time atomic energy, this kind of thing that was safe in a way,
Mm-hmm.
but also the most deadliest thing to ever,
Right.
ever occur. And through the innovations here in Pittsburgh, we're able to create the world's first atomic engine. So now this is an engine that was to power a submarine, an atomic submarine, one that could have energy source that almost would be everlasting.
Mm-hmm.
Is what atomic energy is. That was USS Nautilus, was the submarine that it was put on. And that occurred in 1954. But then, I didn't even put that on here, but the very first atomic power plant was in Shippingsport here nearby, here in Pittsburgh. And that was the world's first atomic power plant. So that's two big ones.
Huge.
Which is atomic energy. And everything that you've seen since anywhere else in the world of an atomic power plant is because of what Pittsburgh did.
Pretty remarkable.
It is.
Very, very remarkable. And since we're talking about tech and science, let's go on to a couple of other things. You mentioned in a previous episode about video phones.
Yeah.
And how they have their origin here. I mean, we all use a phone now for FaceTime calls and stuff like that, video chats and Zoom calls and things. But the very first time that somebody was able to communicate.
Well, think of this. When's the first time you remember a touch tone phone beyond a rotary phone?
Oh, my goodness, back in the 80s.
80s. Okay. Right. The touch tone, the rotary phones, they've been around since the beginning. Do you remember a time period when there was no such thing as area codes?
Yes, I do.
You know,
Yes.
you remember that kind of thing that would happen. Now, how about what year would you say there was no such thing as area codes?
Well, the area codes weren't necessary to call somebody. I'm thinking like late 80s, early 90s. I remember an era back in the 70s and I believe the early 80s. You didn't even need the first two digits. Like the phone number that sticks in my head the strongest is 88441, which was my grandmother's phone number that then had to have the 65 in front of it. And then you had to put the 412 in front of it. But I go all the way back to just the phone numbers.
Yeah.
But then there was a time where you didn't even have phone number prefixes. There were name prefixes.
Yeah, you were just, Pennsylvania 6500, right? So anyways, well, what if I told you that while you were a kid in 1970, you technically had the availability to use a video phone? And not only use it, but use it well. It worked. It's exactly what you see today. It had a mute button. It had different filters that you could change even what you look like on the screen. And this technology was developed here in Pittsburgh by AT&T and was first premiered to the world on June 29th, 1970. Somewhere 2 days ago. Fascinating. But
it is.
This thing, which if you go on YouTube, you can actually find the video of this event. Now, the first phone call, was Alexander Graham Bell to another man in another room. And what they did for this event in 1970 was track down the descendants of Alexander Graham Bell and that man from the other room. And then it turns out the guy who it happened to be was the CEO of ALCOA. He was the grandson of the man who received the first phone call ever from Alexander Graham Bell.
That is so
and
cool.
Decided to test it out from the mayor's office. Mayor Pete Flaherty was the person who got to actually do this thing. And they tested it out and they filmed it all, and it's all on video of the world's first video telephone call. It cost something like $40 a minute, and nobody could use it because there wasn't that many things that existed. But it was possible when you were a child.
Wow. The technology
Isn't
was
that
there.
crazy? Yeah. So, think about how many things like that must be lost or you don't know about.
Mm-hmm.
I knew somebody who developed the stealth bomber. He wasn't allowed to talk about it for 20-something years. So there's things like that are being created all the time.
Great
that
point.
we might not know, but probably in Pittsburgh.
Maybe so.
Think about all those weird robot factories now.
Could
right?
be happening.
Who knows what's going on now?
Speaking of robots, computer systems and FORTRAN was developed here.
Yeah, it's one of the most important, computer programming, the computer systems to operate, especially a major corporation of complicated statistics and complicated things, which is why the first one ever was installed at the Westinghouse Bettis Laboratory, which is the atomic laboratory.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where the first computer FORTRAN system was ever installed. Ever.
Wow.
Yes.
JavaScript is something that we use on computers.
Your computers don't work without it. So it became something like a George Westinghouse invention. He invented air brakes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, pretty soon they made it mandatory that all trains need air brakes. Well, computers were invented. They needed a way to, how to navigate code into stuff. Part of that has to do with JavaScript and the way that it translates pages and the certification between different web pages. It's kind of complicated to really explain, how it works. But that concept, the idea of the JavaScript format, is where it was. This Pittsburgh is where it was invented by a man named Bendan Eich. He invented JavaScript. Now, the funny thing is, I don't have it on here, but it is one of the tech things, and also involves the same type of area, same type of thing, JavaScript, same type of computer. Remember, computers here is obviously Carnegie Mellon.
Mm-hmm.
Is when we start talking about these computer firsts. Carnegie Mellon, by the way, some of the advancements into internet as we know it, how computers even work. This all comes from Carnegie Mellon. One of the fascinating things about Carnegie Mellon is two fascinating things. One is on our list, and that is on September 19th, 1982, a man working there named Scott Fahlman was just sending an email to his other people that work at Carnegie Mellon, and he decided to kind of specify a new way of communicating through hieroglyphics, which he called emojis.
Oh, okay.
And figured out, and he specifically states in this email in 1982, which is why it's considered the first, the design of a smiley face when you like something, and also how to make a frowny face when you don't like something. And they decided to kind of test it out just internally. But that document, that email that was sent, even though it was an email, think about that, from 1982. I mean, that's how advanced they were at Carnegie Mellon. But there was an internal email system going around and a messaging service, I guess you could say. But that document is considered the birth of what we today call emoticons, which are in everybody's phone.
Right.
Everybody knows what a smiley face looks like or is, It's funny, though, when we talk, because we've talked about that previously, how, like, what is a first? Like, is a smiley first in an email really a first? An emoticon? Like I said, that's why I said the word hieroglyphics. Because
good point.
Clearly people have been painting symbols for a long time.
To represent things, yes.
Yeah.
And anybody who ever put a smiley face on a note or a letter or whatever.
Right. Like,
yes.
But, what makes this first? And it has to do with the documentation of it all. It has to do with like how there is no other documentation of an email specifically saying virtual emotions instead of cave painting type of hieroglyphics. This is a different digital format of those hieroglyphics. But that does have an origin in Pittsburgh. It's crazy. The other thing was the first computer virus. The first computer virus ever was created by a 15-year-old kid in McKeesport on an early version of an Apple computer, where he was able to train it to where it would pop, like when you load in, turn the computer on, and like a message would pop up as like a joke, kind of. And they put it on a disk and was able to put it into other computers where it would copy that virus, and was able to, like, it basically infected the entire school system at that time period. He was hired because of that. Became one of the biggest developers of protecting virus, but he is credited with the world's first computer virus. That was a kid in Pittsburgh who invented that.
That's
Crazy.
Pretty cool, too.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about, real quick as we wrap this up, world records that have occurred here.
So there's so many good ones.
Largest gas storage tank?
Yeah. So imagine yourself 100 years ago, 1920s, looking at the Carnegie Science Center. And now, you know how tall the OmniMax building, the part of it is, that big kind of circular section of the Science Center. It's just a movie theater. Well, imagine something 2 times bigger, and imagine 3 of them sitting at that spot at one point. The world's largest gas storage tanks once sat at the spot where the Carnegie Science Center is today. And to give you a sense of how big those were, they were about as big as that kind of rotunda, and there was many of them. Tragically, in 1928, they exploded, killed something like 37 people. It knocked out windows downtown Pittsburgh, all the north side, it was chaos.
My.
There's stories that go along with all that stuff, but it, killed 28 people. I actually have it written down. Killed 28 people, leveled everything within 5 miles when it exploded. So,
what a frightening thought.
Yeah, the world's largest gas storage tank. Crazy.
On the fun side of things, the largest pierogi, we had that official. I mean, we love our pierogies.
123-pound pierogi. Yes, made at Rivers Casino. So 2014 is when that happened, the world's largest pierogi.
Carnegie Science Center is part of what you just said regarding the storage tanks. Carnegie Museum is on the list, too, with a world record. And what is this one?
They actually have a few, but the one that I pointed on here, which I thought was the most interesting out of the few they had, was the longest dinosaur tail ever found. That is the Diplodocus, or Dippy, as we call him. But that tail, and next time you go there, really look at the very tippy edge. You can kind of follow it along, that whole thing. But that is the world record for the largest dinosaur tail ever found.
Okay.
With about 43 to 45 feet long. Just his tail.
That's long.
Yeah. The other world record that I know about the Carnegie is the T-Rex that's there.
Mm-hmm.
It's the world's only complete skeleton of a T-Rex ever. There's never been another T-Rex.
So everyone else
complete.
You go see,
you're
going to see a copy, or they have some parts.
Pieces like a jawbone or something that was missing from a different one. But there's never been a full skeleton of a T-Rex ever found.
Mm-hmm.
But the one that they do have is the Carnegie one.
Yeah, and one final one here, the longest submersion in icy waters. We get to have that to our credit.
I like to say that one because it's a world record that will never be beaten. It's not allowed to be beaten. And then when I say world record, these are Guinness Book of World Records. These aren't just like records in general. These are just like Guinness Book of World Records events. And that one right there, the longest submersion in icy water, happened with Gustav Brickner, which I'm sure some people listening might even remember this guy, that he did in 1963, but he stayed in negative 18-degree water 6 minutes and 22 seconds.
That's insane to even think about.
Well, it was insane. And even people during that time period, I mean, could last maybe a minute, 2 minutes in this type of water. And what this Gustav did, I mean, he did things like swim the English Channel backwards and, he was just crazy. He was like, a stunt. Right. So like, you were either going to die or get the world record.
He was like the Evel Knievel of water.
In fact, the reason why the record is no longer in the Guinness Book of World Records, even though it still counts, is because so many people have died trying to beat his record that they pulled it officially from one that's ever allowed to be copied or try to be beaten. So it's a record that will never be beaten, which I like that too.
Yeah. That's good. John Schalcosky with us from the odd, mysterious, fascinating history of Pittsburgh. You can find out more about him at his social media pages at Odd Pittsburgh on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. He'll be back with us again for another episode of World Firsts out of Pittsburgh. I want to thank you all for listening to the show. Please be sure to click the subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. For more on me and the show, be sure to visit ManginoTalks.com. If there's a topic that you would like me to talk about or a guest that you would like me to have on, send me an email, mangino@manginotalks.com. Follow me on your favorite social media platform by using @ManginoTalks. And once you find me, please like, follow, subscribe, and share the pages with your friends and your family. And thanks again for listening to the Mangino Talks podcast.
You can take